The grand estate stood as a testament to power and privilege, its towering columns and sprawling gardens reflecting the wealth that had been passed down for generations. Inside its vast halls, echoes of laughter and conversation once filled the air, but beneath the surface, the family that resided within was anything but harmonious. Nia and Zara had grown up in the lap of luxury, yet their childhood had been shaped by something far more toxic than financial abundance: competition. Nia was the elder of the two sisters, sharp-witted and ambitious, but always standing in the shadow of Zara, the golden child. Zara had an effortless charm, the kind that made people gravitate toward her. She was beautiful, kind-hearted, and academically gifted, the pride of their parents. Their father, a shrewd businessman who had built an empire from the ground up, often spoke of passing his legacy to someone worthy, and it was clear that he saw Zara as the rightful heir. Their mother, though elegant and poised in public, was cold and distant at home, more interested in maintaining appearances than nurturing her daughters. From a young age, Nia felt the sting of neglect. It wasn't that she was unloved, but rather unnoticed. No matter how hard she worked, Zara always seemed to shine brighter. At school, teachers praised Zara for her intelligence and grace. At home, their father spoke of her as if she were the future of the family dynasty. Nia, in contrast, was seen as competent but lacking the spark that made her sister so special. It was a silent, unspoken rule in the household. Zara was the favorite. The family's estate was more than just land and wealth. It was a symbol of power. Their father had spent decades expanding their empire, investing in businesses, acquiring properties, and ensuring that their family name carried weight. The inheritance was not just money, it was influence, a position in high society, control over assets that could determine futures. It was the key to everything Nia had ever wanted: recognition, respect, and above all, the feeling that she was finally the one in control. As the years passed, Nia's resentment festered. She masked it well, smiling at family dinners, playing the role of the dutiful daughter, but deep inside, jealousy gnawed at her. She watched as Zara flourished effortlessly, beloved by all. It wasn't fair. Why should Zara get everything handed to her while Nia had to fight for scraps of attention? Why should her father's wealth that could change her life go to someone who had never had to struggle? The realization came slowly but surely, like a dark cloud settling over her thoughts. If Zara stood in her way, then Zara was a problem that needed solving. And problems, no matter how big, always had a solution. From the moment Nia could understand the world around her, she knew she was second place. It wasn't something anyone had to say out loud. It was in the way people looked at Zara, the way they spoke about her, the way their parents subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, placed her on a pedestal. Zara was everything Nia was not. She had a warmth to her, an ease that made people want to be near her. As a child, she was the one teachers adored, the one relatives fawned over at family gatherings. "Look at her," they would say, their eyes gleaming with admiration. "She's going to do great things." And then there was Nia. She wasn't ignored completely, but she was overlooked, an afterthought in the presence of her younger sister's brilliance. If Nia achieved something, it was acknowledged briefly before the conversation shifted back to Zara's latest accomplishments. If she spoke, people listened, but never with the same enthusiasm they reserved for Zara. One of Nia's earliest memories was of a school play when she was 6. She had worked so hard to memorize her lines, practicing in front of the mirror, eager to impress their parents. But when the day came, she barely managed to finish her first scene before the audience's attention drifted elsewhere. Zara was next, and she stole the show. Their parents beamed with pride as Zara performed effortlessly, her voice clear, her expression perfect. That night at dinner, their father went on and on about how gifted Zara was, while Nia sat there, pushing food around on her plate, invisible. It was always like that. Zara didn't even have to try. By the time they reached their teenage years, the divide between them had solidified. Zara was not only intelligent, but also kind, which somehow made it worse. It would have been easier to hate her if she had been arrogant or cruel, but she wasn't. She was the kind of person who helped strangers, who never spoke badly about others, who made friends effortlessly. She even defended Nia on the rare occasions when someone made an unfair remark about her. And that infuriated Nia even more. It wasn't that she wanted Zara to fail, at least, not at first. She just wanted a chance to be seen, to be the one their father looked at with pride instead of mild approval. But life didn't work that way. When their father revealed his will, any hope Nia had of ever being his equal crumbled. Zara would inherit nearly everything. The estate, the investments, the businesses, all of it would be hers. Nia would get a fraction, a sum that, while still significant, was nothing compared to the empire her father was handing over to Zara. It was clear that, in his eyes, there was only one true heir. The moment she heard the words leave his mouth, something inside Nia snapped. She clenched her fists under the table, struggling to keep her face neutral as her father spoke about Zara's leadership potential. The room blurred around her as the weight of it settled in. She was being cast aside, discarded like a mere spectator in her own family's legacy. For days, rage consumed her. She could barely sleep, lying awake at night as her thoughts twisted into darker and darker shapes. How was this fair? Why should Zara get everything while she, Nia, was left with crumbs? She had worked just as hard, endured just as much. No, she had endured more, because she had always been fighting to be noticed. And for what? The idea came slowly, like a whisper in the back of her mind. At first, she dismissed it, shaking her head as if to physically rid herself of the thought. But it returned, stronger this time, more persistent. What if Zara wasn't in the picture? Without Zara, the will could change. Without Zara, their father would have no choice but to see her as the rightful heir. Without Zara, the world would finally recognize that Nia was the one who deserved to stand at the top. The more she thought about it, the more it made sense. It wasn't murder, it was justice. It was balancing the scales, fixing a mistake that had been made long before either of them were born. It was a way to claim what should have been hers all along. Nia stared at her reflection in the mirror one night, her own eyes dark and unreadable. There was no guilt, no hesitation. Only purpose. She knew what needed to be done. And she was ready to do it. Nia's plan took shape in the quiet hours of the night, a dark blueprint unfolding in her mind. She had considered other possibilities, an accident, a poisoning, something discreet, but none seemed foolproof. Her father was a man of influence, which meant the investigation into Zara's death would be thorough. If there was even a hint of foul play, the consequences would be severe. She needed something devastating, something that would leave no room for doubt. Fire. It was perfect. A fire could spread quickly, consuming everything in its path. A single, well-placed flame could turn Zara's luxurious bedroom into an inferno. The authorities would call it a tragic accident, perhaps faulty wiring, a forgotten candle, a malfunctioning heater. By the time the truth was suspected, it would be too late to prove anything. For days, Nia observed every detail of the house, taking note of the security cameras, the smoke alarms, the placement of electrical outlets. She studied Zara's habits, memorized the way she moved through the house, when she locked her door, when she turned out her lights. She knew that on most nights, Zara was a deep sleeper, exhausted from long hours of work and social engagements. Then, on a cold Friday night, the moment arrived. The household was still, wrapped in the kind of silence that only comes in the dead of night. Nia moved like a shadow, her heart pounding but her hands steady. She had chosen her tools carefully, accelerant from the garage, a bundle of cloth soaked in alcohol, and a box of matches. Zara's bedroom door was slightly ajar, just enough for Nia to push it open soundlessly. The moonlight spilled in through the tall windows, casting a soft glow over Zara's sleeping form. She was curled up beneath the silk covers, breathing deeply, unaware that this would be the last night of her life. Nia hesitated for only a moment. She had always resented Zara, always wished for her to disappear, but now that the moment had come, something primal twisted in her gut. It was not regret, not yet, but a brief flicker of doubt, a whisper of hesitation. Then she saw the framed photo on Zara's nightstand. A picture of them as children, arms wrapped around each other, smiling as if nothing in the world could tear them apart. Nia clenched her jaw and pushed the feeling away. This wasn't the time for second thoughts. She moved quickly, dousing the base of the curtains and the edges of the bed with the accelerant. She arranged the cloth near the dresser, ensuring the flames would spread upward, engulfing the furniture and blocking any escape. With trembling fingers, she struck a match. The small flame flickered for a second before she dropped it onto the soaked fabric. The fire took hold instantly. At first, it was a soft glow, a delicate dance of orange and red. But within moments, it exploded into something monstrous, leaping up the curtains, racing across the furniture. Smoke thickened in the air, curling toward the ceiling in dark, suffocating waves. Zara stirred. Then she woke. A scream tore from her throat, raw and panicked, as she threw back the covers and stumbled out of bed. Her eyes darted wildly, trying to make sense of the chaos. The fire was everywhere, blocking the door, licking at the walls, devouring everything in sight. Nia stood just outside the room, hidden in the shadows. She could hear Zara coughing, choking on the thick smoke, see her silhouette moving frantically through the blaze. She could imagine the terror flooding her sister's veins, the desperate realization that there was no escape. Zara's screams grew louder, more frantic. She pounded on the walls, clawed at the door handle, but the heat was unbearable. The flames roared, drowning out her cries, swallowing the room whole. For a moment, Nia thought it was over. Then something happened that she hadn't expected. Zara didn't just scream, she called her name. Nia. The voice was hoarse, broken. Help me. The words struck her like a slap. She hadn't planned for this. She had expected screams, terror, but not this. Not her name. For the first time, panic crept into Nia's chest. This was wrong. This was... A crash shattered the moment. The bedroom windows exploded as the fire consumed the glass, sending shards flying. The house alarm blared to life, piercing through the night. Nia backed away, her breath coming in short gasps. It was too late now. She had to go. The sound of sirens filled the air. The fire had spread faster than she anticipated, the heat now reaching beyond Zara's room. Smoke curled down the hall, creeping toward her. She turned and ran, slipping down the back staircase just as the front door burst open. Firefighters stormed in, shouting orders, rushing toward the flames. The glow of the fire painted the walls in eerie, flickering patterns as the house was consumed by chaos. Nia forced herself to blend in with the panicked household staff and family members who had gathered outside. She clutched at her mother's arm, feigning horror as they watched the flames tear through the house. Zara was still inside. The firemen fought to control the blaze, hoses spraying torrents of water, but the fire was relentless. Minutes felt like hours as Nia stood there, heart pounding, waiting for the inevitable. Then, through the crackling inferno, there was movement. A figure emerged, half carried by two firefighters. Zara. Her face was covered in soot, her hair singed at the ends, her nightgown blackened with smoke. But she was alive. Nia's blood turned to ice. She hadn't expected this. This wasn't supposed to happen. Zara had survived. And now, she was looking straight at her. Nia stood among the grieving crowd, her face streaked with tears, her hands trembling as she clutched a damp tissue. The smell of smoke still lingered in the air, clinging to the ruins of what had once been their family home. Firefighters moved through the wreckage, their voices low, their movements methodical. The blaze had gutted most of Zara's room, leaving behind charred walls and smoldering furniture. The rest of the house had been damaged, but the fire had been contained before it could destroy everything. Zara had survived, but barely. She had been pulled from the flames unconscious, suffering from severe smoke inhalation and second-degree burns on her arms. The doctors had put her under sedation, stating that she needed time to recover. No one knew when she would wake. Nia played her part well. She sobbed when people expected her to sob. She held on to their mother for support, her body shaking with supposed grief. She whispered, "I can't believe this happened. over and over again, as though the shock had left her mind fractured. The police arrived shortly after the fire had been extinguished, and their investigation was swift. They combed through the wreckage, questioning family members, house staff, and anyone who had been near the estate that night. Nia knew they would find nothing. She had been careful, meticulous. She had used accelerants that could be mistaken for household items, and the fire had burned hot enough to erase any evidence of arson. After a few days of investigation, the police concluded what she had hoped. The fire was ruled an accident. The official report cited an electrical fault as the likely cause: old wiring, a spark near the curtains, a tragic mishap. No foul play suspected. Case closed. With Zara unconscious and their father unable to contest the legal process, the inheritance was swiftly transferred to Nia. Their family's lawyer confirmed it. She now had full control of the estate, the businesses, and all financial assets. She had won. Standing in front of the mirror in her newly claimed bedroom, she allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. The weight of years of jealousy, resentment, and struggle lifted from her shoulders. No longer was she the forgotten sister, the overlooked daughter. She was the one in power now. The only thing left was to ensure that Zara never spoke of that night. Because even though the world believed it had been an accident, there was one person who knew the truth. And if Zara woke up, if she remembered anything, everything Nia had fought for could come crashing down. She turned away from the mirror, straightened her posture, and exhaled slowly. It didn't matter. Zara wouldn't wake up. And if she did, Nia would make sure she never got the chance to tell anyone what really happened. At first, it was subtle. A whisper just at the edge of her hearing, a faint sound that disappeared the moment she tried to focus on it. Nia blamed it on exhaustion. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind, grieving, pretending, ensuring the inheritance transfer went smoothly. She barely slept, her body running on adrenaline and the high of her victory. She had won. Zara was out of the way, and everything their father had built was finally hers. But then she heard it again. Nia. Soft, almost tender, but unmistakable. The voice sent a chill down her spine. It was Zara's. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. The house was supposed to be empty except for the staff, and they were all downstairs. Slowly, she turned her head, searching the dimly lit hallway. Nothing, just silence. Her fingers clenched around the armrest of the chair. She was imagining things. That was all. But the strange occurrences didn't stop. Late at night, when the mansion was supposed to be silent, she heard soft knocks on her bedroom door. The first time, she dismissed it as the wind or an old pipe creaking. The second time, she convinced herself it was one of the housekeepers. The third time, she opened the door. The hallway was empty. That was when the nightmares began. Every time she closed her eyes, she was back in the fire. Zara stood in the middle of the burning room, her face illuminated by the flickering flames. But she wasn't screaming. She wasn't crying. She was staring. Her dark eyes locked onto Nia's, her lips slightly parted as though she wanted to speak. But she didn't. She just stood there, unmoving, watching as the fire consumed her. The dream always ended the same way. The flames rose higher, swallowing Zara whole. Just before she disappeared, she whispered, "I see you." Nia would wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, her heartbeat hammering in her chest. The dream lingered long after she opened her eyes, the ghostly whisper still echoing in her ears. She tried to ignore it, pushing the thoughts away, telling herself that guilt was playing tricks on her mind. But she didn't feel guilty. She had done what she had to do. She had won. Hadn't she? One night, as she passed the grand mirror in the hallway, she caught movement in the reflection. She spun around. Nothing. But when she looked back at the mirror, her blood ran cold. Behind her, in the shadows, stood a figure. Zara. Her skin was burned, her hair singed at the edges, her lips curled into the faintest of smiles. Nia stumbled back, heart pounding. She blinked. And the reflection was gone. The house was silent once more. But Nia knew, deep in her bones, that she was not alone. Nia's grip on reality was slipping. She could feel it unraveling, thread by thread, each passing day dragging her deeper into something she couldn't understand, something she couldn't escape. The house, once a symbol of her victory, had become her prison. It started with the lights, flickering erratically, plunging rooms into darkness just as she entered. The servants swore it was a wiring issue, but Nia wasn't convinced. She would turn on a lamp, only to have it die seconds later. Shadows stretched unnaturally in the corners of her vision, lurking, waiting. Then objects began to move. A book she had left on her desk was suddenly on the floor. Doors she had locked creaked open on their own. Her jewelry box tipped over, scattering Zara's favorite necklace across the vanity. The first message appeared 3 nights later. She awoke to the acrid smell of smoke. Panic surged through her as she bolted upright, her mind flashing back to the fire. But there were no flames, no heat licking at her skin. Just ash thick, black ash smeared across her bedroom wall. 3 words. I know what you did. Nia's breath came in short gasps. Her hands trembled as she stepped toward the wall, reaching out, almost afraid to touch the words. Her mind raced for an explanation. Had one of the housekeepers done this? Had she done this in her sleep? A gust of cold air swept through the room. The candle on her nightstand flickered violently and then, a whisper, right behind her. Nia. She spun around, heart slamming against her ribs. Nothing, but the air was heavy, suffocating. The scent of burning fabric lingered, as if the fire from that night had never truly gone out. She was losing control. Day after day, the torment worsened. She would find mirrors fogged up with words scrawled in condensation, murderer. She would hear soft footsteps following her down the hall, though when she turned, no one was there. And the nightmares. They had changed. Zara no longer stood silently in the fire. She spoke now. I'm coming for you. The final straw came when Nia woke to find her bed covered in ash. The sheets, her pillows, everything was coated in a fine layer of black dust. Her lungs burned as she inhaled the scent. Her hands trembled as she brushed the soot away, revealing another message burned into the fabric. Not gone. Never gone. Nia screamed. She fled the room, running blindly through the halls, her mind a whirlwind of fear and confusion. Was she imagining all of this? Was it guilt poisoning her? Or was it something else, something far worse? Because deep down, beneath the layers of denial, she knew the truth. Zara wasn't gone. She had never left. And she wanted revenge. Nia could no longer tell what was real. The house was alive with whispers, shadows twisting in the dim candlelight. Every surface was marked with Zara's presence, messages in ash, distorted reflections in the mirror, the scent of burning flesh clinging to the air. Then, one night, Zara finally appeared. Nia turned a corner, and there she was, standing in the hallway, just as she had been in the fire, her nightgown scorched, her skin charred and peeling. But her eyes, they were alive, burning with something deeper than hatred. You thought you won, Zara whispered, stepping closer. But you only set yourself free for me. The walls around them ignited in an instant. Flames roared to life, climbing toward the ceiling, filling the air with blistering heat. But it wasn't the house that was burning, it was Nia's mind. She clawed at her skin, feeling the fire creeping over her, consuming her, though there was nothing there. Zara lifted a finger, pointing. Burn with me. Nia let out a strangled cry, her eyes wild with terror. She stumbled into the study, where the fireplace crackled softly. Her hands trembled as she picked up the oil lamp, her mind lost in the inferno only she could see. With a hollow smile, she poured the oil over herself and struck a match. By the time the police arrived, it was over. Nia's charred body lay in the center of the room, the flames having done to her what she had once wished upon her sister. The inheritance, per an unknown clause in their father's will, was donated to charity. In the end, Nia had gained nothing. Only ashes remained.